Welcome to the Qualitas podcast. I'm Kugler, host, and my guest today is Philip Chop. Philip is the head of business development at Glad Pharmaceutical Services, and he is also a big enthusiast of excipients. He's also the founder of pharmaexcipients.com, a website where you can find so much information about excipients. And the aim to be like the Wikipedia of excipients. And today we're going to talk to him about this subject, why he finds this topic so interesting, what people oversee when they think about excipients, where the excipient market is heading. So let's get to it. Okay. Philip, welcome again to the Qualitas podcast. Really excited to have you here again. We had a really fun talk last time about CDMOs, and this time we wanted to speak about excipients. Right, so you're super excited about excipients. It's really interesting. Why? So you're really you are a business developer at Glad at the moment, but you really love the excipients field as well. So where does the passion come from?
Thanks a lot to have me back again with you. Yeah, and a great pleasure, of course, also to talk about the excipient part, because in fact this is the way I started in the pharmaceutical industry. Back in 2000 I started in a very small company handling excipients. It was my first contact to excipients for solid dosage forms, and then very quickly I had to get into the topic and started to realize this exciting field. So this has not stopped over the years, and also within the Glad Group, I'm handling part of the excipient business. So for me, everything that makes a pharmaceutical drug product is related to excipients, of course, and therefore my excitement is all about this, as I call it sometimes, a hidden champion in this field. So yeah, and this has not stopped, and I truly believe we still do not know enough about it, and therefore I engage myself so much within the field of excipients.
What would you say makes it the most interesting, like in comparison to raw materials or APIs? Why specifically excipients?
I would say, in a pharmaceutical development phase, there is a lot of time and money spent to synthesize the active substance, to get it stable, non-toxic, and have the right attributes to really give the difference. And we enter with the pharmaceutical excipients very late. So of course, we have the first phases where we have basic mixes, but then the galenical development of the drug starts usually in a very late stage. And as so much attention has already been given to the API, sometimes I believe people start to forget about the impact of the excipient itself. And over time now, we have simply more complex excipients as well. So, we used to call them the anything else than the active substance should not be doing any activity, any harm. Nowadays, it's the contrary. The more sophisticated APIs get, the more sophisticated excipients have to become. We have to solve with excipients many topics that we cannot solve alone with the formulation and the drug delivery technologies that we have. So I believe they're getting more and more important. So I really want to make sure that people understand this.
Right. So you have founded the website pharmaexcipients.com, right? So
Yes.
Is it the goal to help people understand the excipients better? So what is it all about?
It all started back in 2010 as a LinkedIn group, because it was the only way to communicate with a low budget. And there the aim was really to get the discussion going from my side on excipients. And at a certain point of time, some good friends told me, why do you do this only on LinkedIn? Do a website out of it, so you keep the content. And it's really, yes, to share in one place everything around excipients and give access to this to all the users, in fact.
Right. So I've seen that there are a lot of articles, a lot of publications about excipients there. So how do you bring the knowledge?
Excipients are in any formulation. There is literally no formulation without an excipient. So what I do, or what we do nowadays, is we check the internet on content that can be interesting for our audience, and then we post it on the website. At the same time, we are working on basics on excipients. So we want to have like an excipients Wikipedia growing. We have experts that speak about specific topics. Then we organize webinars, be it on amorphous solid dispersions with partners. And then, of course, we have a combined database of excipients where you directly can order samples with the suppliers. So it's both access to information about excipients and then, of course, also getting the excipient. And what we want to do is Google decides a little bit what we find. We try to find things that might be interesting for the audience, for the user, and bring it to a specific point where you can check based on your interest. So we also build categories. So if you're interested in 3D printing, for instance, there is a category with 3D printing, and you find quite some articles. So it should be a first step to get a summary of interesting topics.
Where is the market going right now in the excipient world? So in which direction is the market is heading? So you mentioned there are new excipients that are coming out. So everybody were thinking before, okay, excipients, it's so simple. It should be like sugar and it should do nothing, right? And you say, okay, this world is far gone. So where are we now with it, and why is that?
It seems to be an easy question, but I have to I have to separate the answers. So I see the different aspects. So of course we have a lot of commodity excipients, which are simple. Let's call them simple excipients, although they're not simple. Don't get me wrong, but that they are standardized excipients. And then we have kind of excipients that have additional functionalities, be it based on co-processing of existing excipients, that are really also sometimes tailor-made, so more complex things. And I think this part will grow rapidly still over the coming years. And then, of course, we don't have to forget the term of novel excipients. So can be a complete new chemical entity, or can be also an excipient which has not been used in the route of administration. So, for instance, a novel excipient can also be an excipient that could be added in another way to the body, and now is absorbed orally. So, and these are going. So, novel excipients are going in a development way nearly to an API from the regulatory point of view. So it takes a lot of time and money until you're there. And that's also a little bit where innovation is slightly hindered still, because you have an upfront investment of money and time, which is tremendous. And then you are not the lead API, but you're in the formulation with the API. So you strictly depend also on the success of the development of the drug product. So for very new excipients, it's still a long way to go. So what I see is standard excipients, of course, then a lot of co-processed with added functionalities. And then from time to time, some really new excipients will come to the market.
What are the hottest excipients right now, would you say? Can you place some of the hottest excipients on the market, or the variety is so huge right now that it is really scattered?
I mentioned before higher functionality or other functionality of excipients, which when you look now at novel production technologies, this can be a driver, like 3D printing I mentioned, like continuous manufacturing. So potentially attributes of bulk excipients or standard excipients might have to be changed. So this gives new product types potentially. The same goes, we go for not only for new production technologies, but also for other application forms. I mentioned before that new chemical entities are more in BCS class 2 and 4, so we have other hurdles to overcome. So we will need further excipients just to go with the needs of the market. We mentioned a lot of time is mentioned patient centricity, dedicated really down to the need of the patient. So this might also trigger a new, let's say, new forms of excipients, new attributes, characteristics of excipients. So this is how I see a little bit how things are growing.
At the stage of where we are with excipients right now and where we're heading, if you had the possibility to influence the market like 20 years ago, in which direction would you say it should have gone back there?
There have to be some fundamental changes. It's the way that the pharma industry and the excipient manufacturer communicate with each other. I think this is something I would have loved to be changed many years ago. And of course, it has to do with confidentiality and other topics around product development. But I think a fundamental topic is that most of the time an excipient manufacturer does not know for what is his excipient used in a formulation. And I believe that if we would be more open with each other to discuss this, it would be much easier to get the right excipient combination for a specific formulation. Where I would like that the market goes is, in general terms, in better material and process understanding. So in a very early stage. So now we talk about in silico development. We have continuous manufacturing. We have 3D printing that need much more of a materials understanding, which is now driven. But I believe this will be the same for a standard batch production, standard manufacturing of tablets whatsoever. So this combination of much deeper understanding of the material being used. I lately had a discussion about excipient variability, and not only from manufacturer to manufacturer, but from batch to batch. And this is also an important part that has to be solved, not in the way to reduce or reduce the variability, but not to neglect it and directly integrate it. And this is not only valuable for the or valid for the API, for the excipient, but also for the API. So we have to know about variability in the early phase development to make a stable product in the end. So this is more on the material. How the market is set up, I think digitalization has shown over the last year now some changes will be needed, or we can do things in a better way. So I think the market access to excipient, especially in small scale, can be optimized, should be faster, so that nowadays the customer of B2B, they are used also as a B2C customer to order things via 1 click or 2 clicks. This will have an impact also on the B2B business as we do it right now. Roles definition will change over time. And yeah, so there is a lot to do. But I sincerely think the major topic is really communication, understanding, and getting these partners closer to each other. That's what I would wish myself for, to really get better understanding of both parties.
Right. And probably it's through better communication because more information is available online and so on. And why is the communication is not so good? Is it in terms of quality of the excipients? Because they don't, the manufacturer don't understand the requirements of the market enough, of the pharmaceutical market, or are there other reasons?
I think in general, as a manufacturer of excipients, you go according to your specifications, right? And within the specifications, you might have some variability. So I think there is a fear that if you talk too much about the variability, the potential variability, the pharmaceutical customer might come and say, yeah, but then we need to make the specification more tighter, or tighten the specification, which then has, of course, an impact on productivity, yield, and cost at the excipient manufacturer side. So this can only be solved if we accept that there is a variability. But I believe what we have to come to, and this is from excipient to excipient different, what we have to come to is really to understand what can be the impact, and then in predictive modeling with, for instance, with in silico tools, or with artificial intelligence, materials understanding, and application, of course, of quality by design, not only on the process but also on the excipient, to make sure that we are in a safe environment, also based on variabilities, because we also have in the process, we have variabilities that we nowadays fully accept, and it's integrated. We have to make sure that formulation and process are in the design space, and that we are sure. But I really want to emphasize that the excipients can play a major role in this. And I see things starting with excipients QBD, but I sincerely believe it has to be improved still quite a bit.
I would like also to ask again about something that you mentioned. So you said that many don't understand enough about excipients also during the formulation phases. So do you think that this is an issue with, let's say, research organizations and the scientists, that they have their APIs, they work, but now it comes to formulation, but then there is the problem to fit the right excipient in there. So is it still an issue, and how is it evolving?
I think it has to do with the basic training. Of course, if you look at the pharmaceutical training program, of course, excipients is not a huge topic. It's a very small topic. And then, of course, there are deepening studies. The people that go into the galenical pharmaceutical technology, they know much more about it. But we still see, or I still see and have the feeling that, you enter into a environment and their preferences. Their preferences driven by different forces, driven by experience. So the old saying, we always formulate it like this, so we do it still, because it's also easier. You don't have to discuss with the purchasing department that you need a specific new excipient that is not yet in the listing. If you use what you have, you don't risk too much. Other than if you say, I have this new type of excipient that I would like to bring in. It has to be harmonized with what is in manufacturing. So longer term. So what really happens is we look for new solutions if the standard solution does not work. And I believe it should be the contrary. We should always look for what fits best, which sometimes might not be the reality. still nowadays, but I think this is where it should go. And we also have to see, as we change roles in companies, for instance, in the offices, also in research, roles change, and sometimes people that used to be in liquid formulation are suddenly in solid dosage formulation, and vice versa. So they have to get trained. They need to increase their knowledge about the use, and usually you're then trained also mainly internally. So this can have all to do also with footprints as well.
So you said that usually when it comes to new formulations, the scientists start with what is known, what is usually being used, and they start checking. Okay, it doesn't work, it doesn't hold, it doesn't fit with the formulation. Let's start trying new things. But how would you approach it? So what would be the best practice way to approach it? How would you feed the right excipients? Right now? Would it be according to cost, or I don't know, some simulations, computer simulations? How would it work?
I believe it has to be a combination of experience and predictive modeling, computer simulations, knowledge, bringing in the knowledge really, and combining this with material and process understanding. So it sounds pretty complex, but I think this is what we need to do. So I'm a big fan of getting things done right, if possible, at the beginning. So investigation in what is good for the product should be the first term. You mentioned cost. I believe if we have to slow down a formulation development or product development because we went for the wrong horse at the beginning, this is more costly than to try to do some small scale trials, compatibility studies and the like, which is of course done logically. But I think we can even start at an earlier phase in the evaluation what is good. And I see this more and more being done, but I believe there is still more room to do so.
Right. So, did you see formulations or a new product that just shatter because they couldn't find the right excipient, or it took just too long to get there, or it doesn't get that far?
No, I don't think so, to be honest. But and possibly this has changed over time quite a bit. But I saw things that possibly it's not optimum. You know, you have your prototypes, and then the prototype is working, right? And then comes the decision. Now we need to move ahead. So often there is this wishful thinking. We optimize later on, but I very much question the optimization later on. And I fully understand the process because there is a lot of money involved. And once you have something that is working, you should move ahead with what is working, because you need to go to the market, you need to do the clinics beforehand, of course. And yeah, my take is there that you simply most of the time will skip any optimization or any changes later on. So therefore, I'm very much, if ever possible, and there are many factors to it that it is not possible to do so, but I would love to see this clearance in a very early phase to get really the optimum out of it.
Right. So, would you say that it's most important for the early scientists to stay informed about new excipients and how they work, or would you say it's more important for the CDMOs? So, who are the key people that should always stay informed about what's going on in the excipient world? Because you say it's so overlooked.
Everybody. No, no. I think it's really the formulation scientists, development scientists, R&D, that that in the end create the formulation. This can be a CDMO, this can be an originator, generic company. Really, the people that work on those formulations should be informed. And I know it's difficult. It's such a wild field. And when I say you should do the optimum, I mean you have a huge choice of technologies, of drug delivery platforms, of other methods, and then I come up and now you should also look at the excipients and why don't you understand them properly or good enough, which in many cases is, of course, is the case. We understand them, but it's still, for me, it's this aim in my dreams that we get even more understanding of what we know nowadays.
Right. And if we have this better understanding, so where will we be then? Would it be much easier formulation? Will it be much money saving? Would it be better drugs? So what is the main goal here?
You mentioned the goals. I mean, the first goal is always to have a better drug product, of course. But what we also need to achieve is higher yields, the highest yields possible, because we want to have medicine that is affordable. We want to have a control over the process. And I can only control the process, this is my personal view, if I know the variabilities that I mentioned before. And then I know what happens, and this is what really drives also me in this discussion. It shouldn't be dependent on Jan or Philip that is running a process. It should be okay, whoever does it. And of course, this has not only to do with the excipients at all. There is many process parameters, air conditions, whatsoever. But I think we need to get the full understanding, and this is, by the way, coming with the continuous manufacturing much more, with application of PAT, so that we get a much better control over what happens really in a process. And the excipients are a small or a big part of it.
Right. So this is quite insightful, because I think few realize how much impact excipients have on the main products. So as you mentioned, the yield and the effectiveness, and it's not only about the API, right? Especially nowadays, and I believe that now there are much more control over the excipients, much more regulatory oversight. So it's people starting to understand the importance of it. So Philip, thank you very much for sharing all this interesting information about excipients, and I hope people will gain some better understanding of the importance of it, and see where it is going. And everybody who is listening or watching, go to pharmaexcipients.com and learn something more about the excipients, because it is a really great resource. So Philip, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jan. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for listening to the Qualitalks podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star review. If you want to learn more about GMP, please visit us at www.qualistery.com. Stay compliant and see you at the next one.